Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. If you're not using the BetRivers app, what are you doing? We've got you covered. Football, baseball. In fact, if you were with me last week, I hit a baseball parlay. I had a same-game four-leg parlay that I hit on the Browns-Jaguars game this weekend, too. And I went 3-2 in our staff NFL pick. So I'm on fire right now. Make sure you're using the BetRivers app. And make sure you continue listening or watching or both this podcast, because today I'll be joined by sports talk legend Mike Francesa. As a kid growing up in New York, I want to say 15. I think I was 15, I believe, when the Fan in New York, Sports Radio 66 WFAN, went on the air. And soon after, I became a regular listener to Mike and the Mad Dog when that show started to blow up and became big. I would call in to Mike and the Mad Dog when I was a teenager. And so those guys have inspired a lot of people in this business. And when I worked at WFAN in New York, well, I'll talk about more of this with Mike. Mike was always very nice to me, and I appreciated that. And it was intimidating when I was a young broadcaster to meet Mike and Chris, and it was really cool. So anyway, I'm excited to have Mike on the podcast for the first time ever, as the Browns get set to play the Giants this Sunday, 1 p.m. in Cleveland. Mike Francesa of BetRivers Now, a longtime sports talk show host, top of the food chain. He joins me next, right here, in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers.
You're watching Adam the Bull on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome back to the Bullpen with Adam the Bull here on BetRivers. We're joined by sports talk legend, great Mike Francesa is with us. And Mike, I got to tell you, I don't know if you remember this, and I want to thank you for this, because when I got the job originally in Cleveland with the Fan here when they were starting a new station, you invited me to your office. I don't know if you remember this, before I left. And you brought me in, and you said, I was nervous, and you said to me, Cleveland's a great sports town, and you're going to do very well there. And that meant the world to me that you said that, and you were right. You nailed it. And so all these years later, I want to say thank you for that. I don't know if you remember that. You probably had a million conversations, but.
No, I do remember it, Bull, and I know that you really wanted to find a niche at Fan, and clearly you had the ability to find a niche at Fan. I mean, that's just highly subjective. You know that. But I knew that there are certain places to go where a guy who is a passionate sports guy, who is a guy who likes sports, and I knew you were, okay, who's going to do his work and is going to get himself into the fabric. Cleveland is a great sports town. I always thought of the sports towns that I could work in and thrive in, and Boston was always one. Cleveland was always another. I always knew that I would love everything in Cleveland except the weather. Other than that, I would love. It's a great sports town.
Yeah,
it's got so much there. It's got so much history there. It's got so many great fans there. It's a great town. It really is. People don't realize. Pittsburgh's another one, underrated town. First of all, a lot better town and a lot nicer place to live than people have any consciousness of. They think of steel mills, they're out of their mind. They don't realize. The bottom line is some of these towns that people think only New York, there are a lot of great, passionate sports cities, and Cleveland's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know that at the time because, I didn't really know Cleveland at all. But, yeah, you're right. I'll tell you, though, what was an adjustment coming from New York, one of the many adjustments moving here, was that, as you know better than anybody, in New York, you could talk about the Giants, the Jets, the Yankees, and Mets at any time. Whereas here, the Browns just rule the roost. Right. Obviously, people care about the Guardians and care about the Cavs, but the Browns are it. I mean, it's not even close. Who's the most popular team?
Right. Same thing in Philadelphia with the Eagles. Yeah. I mean, the Eagles are the passion of the team. And Cleveland is a Browns team. Is a Browns city. That's all there is to it. As a matter of fact, as someone who's been around the NFL forever, okay, going on 50 years, there's two teams I want to see play in the Super Bowl. One is the Lions. The other
Sure.
one is the Browns, because their fan bases are going to go absolutely insane when it finally happens. Just absolutely insane. When that day comes, and it's been a long time coming, those two places will go crazy for that situation.
No doubt. Mike, one last thing I wanted to get to before we get to the upcoming matchup between the Browns and Giants. You know, anybody, and I'm not just saying this because you're with me because I've said this before, but any sports talk show host or any sports guy in America that grew up in New York or New Jersey or Connecticut, in that general area, you have influenced so many people. I know you know that, but like, it's to the point, I say this to Monzo sometimes. I'm like, I won't name any names, but I'll hear somebody on the radio and I'll be like, that guy's he's just trying to be Mike. They use your mannerisms. They use the way you, I mean, it's amazing. It's a compliment, obviously, but so many of us grew up listening. I remember when the fan came on, I was like 15 years old. I don't know if I've even told you this, but when I was 18, 19, I used to call you and Chris all the time. I would call, I wasn't a regular, but I would call enough. And, the influence you had on all these young broadcasters will never be matched, because the radio industry obviously is not what it was then.
Well, it has changed, and Mike and the Mad Dog had a big impact on, and really did change the way things were done. I appreciate that. The last year that I was working on Fan full time, which was 2017. I did go back for a little while, but
Sure.
when I was there full time, I went to my last Super Bowl, and I had announced that I was stepping down. And so many of the people there came up and said, "You're the reason I'm in this business." And I've heard that my whole life, and I've heard it a lot in the last 10 years. And it's a nice thing to hear that people say that. It's a great compliment, and it means a lot, because when we started, sports talk was as Frank DeFord at that time put it, the sewer of sports media. Well, now sports talk rules the roost in every city. There's no more big columnists, okay? There's no more newspapers. The world has changed, and now the big guy, if you want to get the pulse of a town in the old days, you went and you read Dave Anderson, or the leading columnist in that town. When you got to that town, you picked up the newspaper and you read that columnist. Now you turn on the guy who is the guy, and there's the guy. The order always works out. There's a guy in each town who's the guy, and that guy now runs sports in that town. And that's the greatest, I think, compliment to us of all, is that we went from where we were considered a guy working at night with a whistle or a bell, or to being the guy in each city. And I think that's the greatest transition that we've seen in our business.
No doubt. And I know your son is playing football, right, at Hamilton College?
Well, I got one who's playing. I have twins. Jack is a sophomore at Hamilton. He plays tight end. I saw him last weekend at Williams College. What a beautiful! I'd never been there before. That's where George Steinbrenner went. What a beautiful facility. Yeah. And I'm going to see him this weekend play Amherst at home.
Nice.
He's a starting tight end. He's a sophomore. He has a twin sister who's at Villanova. And then I have a younger one, Harrison, who is a little precocious at 17. He's already worked at Barstool for 2 years. This summer, he worked with Frank the Tank all summer. So
nice.
I came home one day in late August, and Frank the Tank was in my swimming pool,
God.
So with his hat on. So Harrison is a freshman at Fairfield. And he has already got a podcast, and he's in the business. So he's the one who's going to be a broadcaster. I don't know that Jack will or won't be, but, Harrison is clearly following along that pathway. So
that's
there
awesome.
might be a Francesa in the business for a while yet. Yes.
Love it. Isn't Hustler at Fair? Isn't that, does he do
games
at Fairfield?
As a matter of fact, Harrison is a freshman. He'll work the telecasts with Bob. He'll be his assistant on the Fairfield home game. So Bob Usler wonderful guy who was one of my two main update guys for 30 years, John Minko the other. He does the games at Fairfield, the TV games at Fairfield, and my son will be his assistant this year as a freshman.
That's awesome. That is so cool. That is really cool. Mike, let's talk some football here a little bit.
Let's
go. The Giants are, from the outside perspective now, for me in Cleveland, are a disaster, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Daniel Jones has been a disaster. We're not used to the Giants being this bad for this long because obviously in their recent history until the last decade, they'd always been really good and competitive. Do you feel like that the organization is anywhere close to being on the right track?
No, not yet. If you're old enough, as old as I am, Bull, you know that there was a time from 65 until Ray Perkins, and then right away Parcells went. See, Ray Perkins was about to turn the Giants around, and Bear Bryant came and said, "You're my replacement." And he said, "Yes, sir," and left abruptly, and Parcells got the job. Yeah. And then the rest is history. Parcells went on to win 2 Super Bowls in 8 years, and then Tom Coughlin came in later after a couple of misses and won 2 more, so they won 4. The late Jim Fossil went to another, so they went to 5 and won 4 of them. A couple of great upsets, as we know, over the Bills, over the Pats. So they had a great history. But since then, they've been really bad, and you can trace it to the building of the stadium, which was a colossal mistake. Oof. And cost them dearly as a franchise. Changed their fan base, changed everything. They have not recovered. They don't have the same ownership they had under the first generation of Tish and Mara. They don't have that now. They're not as seamless as they were then. They hope they're back on the same track. But I tell you, Dable got off to a great start here his first year.
Yeah.
And then the second year was a chaotic mess, infighting with the staff. You know what happened with the defensive coordinator, what went on there. Jones gets hurt. They have a miserable season. And right now, the first year Dable was here, and he came with the reputation as, he had built and he had developed Josh Allen. So he was going to be the guy. He came here. He had a wonderful first year. He was a riverboat gambler. They won games they shouldn't have won. They made the playoffs. They played well, one playoff game, et cetera, et cetera. Now, and in that year, he looked like a guy with a twinkle in his eye and with a little swagger. Now he looks like a guy who wants to jump off a bridge. He looks like the typical New York coach who is now hearing about his job when he comes to the podium every week. Okay. Last week he got a question about his job security, and he just looked daggers through the guy. Okay. So it's starting already. And that always happens here. And you know how bad it gets here when that starts. Yeah. They are already 0-2. And I have always been of the theory, okay, that the worst thing you can do in any sport is start off slowly in the NFL, because what happens is every guy runs to his corner. There's no buying in. There's no buying into the game plan, the coaching staff. Everyone worries about where they're going to play next year. Everyone protects themselves against injuries, and your team is worse than it should be. Or you can start off really fast like the Saints are or the Bucks are, and everybody buys in. Players play hurt. They buy into the game plan, and you can be better than you're supposed to be. Yeah. You can go either way in the NFL. Well, the Giants have opened 0-2, and now the schedule will get – I said after game 1, where they were brutal against Minnesota, they were Sam Darnold came in and tore them apart. They were awful both ways. Played a miserable game. I said, listen, if they lose in Washington, this is a huge game, because look what's coming. At Cleveland, Dallas, at Seattle, which is a rough place to play, and then home against the Bengals on a Sunday night. I said, hey, this is brutal. They could be 0-6 and the season's over. Well, now they're already 0-2, going to Cleveland. Anyone who knows anything about the NFL knows how tough it is to go play in Cleveland against that defense. I know Garrett's hurt, but, Garrett on one leg is better than most guys, so I'm sure he'll play. I know that the Browns have really struggled with their offense, with their offensive line, with their injuries, with their tackles, with the running back, everything else. Plus, Deshaun hasn't been good at all. But your defense is scary enough in that building to give them fits. Now, the Giants played good offense last week, but everyone's going to play good offense against Washington.
Yeah, sure.
They really screwed up with the kicker. He came into the game, had a groin pull. Now, is that the reason he blew out his hamstring in the first quarter? I don't know. I don't know. Go to an orthopedic surgeon and ask him. I have no idea. But They didn't protect themselves. They could have easily. They had guys who haven't played in 2 weeks on the roster. They could have put another guy that they had in the practice squad on the roster. They didn't, and it cost them the game. It flat out cost them the game. And now they're 0-2 going into you guys, which is going to be a very hard game to win. And 0-3 with the Cowboys, who usually beat the heck out of them, is not a pretty situation. And it's going to start to spiral in a big way.
You know, you talk about the Browns defense. They've been particularly good at home. I mean, they hired Jim Schwartz as their DC last year.
Who's a good defensive coordinator. He's a good defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and they got a kid. This is an amazing story. Their linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, we call him JOK.
Yep.
This guy, in his second year, looked completely lost. In fact, we had DeQuell Jackson, who's a longtime good linebacker, came on my show, and he was like, I don't know if this guy can play in the NFL. Well, last year he busted out. He had a Pro Bowl season.
Yep.
And he's off to he makes impact plays for the linebacker position. And you know, Mike, this is not like the Lawrence Taylor days where you had a million linebackers making impact plays. I mean, nowadays you don't have that many. And then with Ward in the secondary, they have an impact player at every level.
Listen, you come into Cleveland, you know one thing. You're going to get the heck knocked out of you, okay? It reminds me of what the Bears used to be. In the old days, the Walter Payton days, even before the 86 Bears were good, the word around the league was if you go into Cleveland, you're not going to be able to walk for 3 weeks after you leave. Go into Chicago, you couldn't walk for 3 weeks afterwards because they beat the heck out of you. That's how I think Cleveland is. I think Cleveland, when you go into Cleveland now against that defense, that's the toughest place to play in the whole league. I don't think there's a tougher place physically to play to get out of there alive and into in that building, especially for a team that doesn't know them and is out of division. Okay, division teams are always different. You know that. They know each other. Yeah. But out of division, you walk in there, you don't know what to expect, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait a second, man, this isn't easy. Well, the Giants are better on offense. Their offensive line is not dreadful this year. Right. They have a major player. He dropped the ball last week after Washington covered him ridiculously. He ate them alive with all kinds of crosses. Yeah. He got targeted 18 times in the game. He caught 10, and then he had a terrible drop at the end of the game, which could have won them the game. Listen, Neighbors is going to be, just like we knew Harrison was going to be, Neighbors is going to be a major player. There's a million of these guys now. They're all over the league, and now the Giants have one. Yeah. Okay? Jones can move the ball. There's things he does well. There's things he does lousy. He runs well. He throws a deep ball well. He can get lost in the intermediate part of the game and throw some really lousy-looking passes for interceptions. He's hot and cold. That's what he is. He's mediocre. He's hot and cold. They have a better offense now. They have a better tight end. Singletary's a solid back. He's not Barkley, but he's a solid back. They're better. The problem is they don't know what they're doing on defense yet. It's a new system. They do have a good front pass rush. They do have a good defensive line. They're weak against the pass, and everyone's completing every pass against them, and that's a huge problem. Washington got into the red zone 7 times, didn't get a touchdown, but got 7 field goals and got inside the 15-yard line 7 times. Yeah. They just couldn't get in the end zone because of penalties and the fact that the rookie quarterback didn't know what he was looking at. Yeah. But he moved the ball all day. They rushed for 200 yards. They had guys open all day. And you can move the ball on the Giants right now, especially via the pass.
You know, you mentioned Watson before. I'm curious your thoughts because when the Browns first traded for him,
right,
I was like, this guy was a stud in Houston. He's going to be great. And he's big time. He's been a disaster here. Right. Now, he was a little better last week. He was competent last week against Jacksonville. But I guess we've lowered the expectations in the short term because he's been so bad. What's your take on him?
I think he has scars on the inside and scars on the outside. Yeah. I think he's got scars from all the sexual attacks that he's gone through and all the innuendo about what went on. Plus, I don't think he's ever been healthy with that shoulder again. I don't think he's the same player. I don't think he has the same arm strength. I don't even think he's remotely close to if you go look at him years ago and now, he doesn't even look like the same player. No, I think his arm is a big problem. I think he's trying to live. I think he's a gamer. I think he's trying to live through it, but I think he can't. I don't think he has any arm strength anymore because I think he's got a damaged arm. I think he's got a damaged shoulder and arm. I don't think he can throw the ball like he used to. I think it's a big problem.
Where are you leaning this week on this game?
Oh, I think this is a very hard game for the Giants. I don't think the Giants are ready mentally or physically for this game. I think it's a very big game for the Browns. Okay, very big game. The Browns were right in that position this year where people weren't in love with them, but they realized that they could easily be a playoff team. Okay, we know that.
Right.
Now, they've had some – you lose a great back. All right, I don't know when he's coming back. Maybe you do. All right.
Yeah.
You've had big problems at the offensive tackle position, which in the NFL is deadly. You know that. If your tackles are hurt, you can't play. That's all. If your tackles are bad, you're done. That's all there is to it. You can't play in this league without tackles. So you guys are banged up, and your quarterback's still banged up. But I find this to be a game that is not a good matchup. It won't be a good matchup. For Neighbors will get it indoctrinated. He'll get a baptism under fire this week from you guys in the secondary. This will be a real hard game for him. He had a picnic last week. Enjoy it. This week's not going to be a picnic. This week's going to be a real tough one for him. They're going to take him away, and I think it's a struggle for the Giants. I'd be very surprised if the Giants win this game this week. Very surprised.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Mike, before we wrap things up, let's talk a little baseball.
Yeah, go ahead.
The now Guardians, of course, since they were the Indians in the mid-'90s,
right,
often have quietly here in Cleveland, a lot of people think of the Yankees as a rival here. I know the Yankees don't think of Cleveland as a rival, but
no,
a lot of people here do, because a lot of those good 90s teams that the Indians had did battle with the Yankees with those great lineups. They didn't have the pitching.
Some of the best teams a couple of the best teams I ever saw were those
unbelievable.
They had
Jim Thome batting eighth one year.
I was at that. I was at that World Series when that was one of the classic World Series ever. Dog and I went to every game. I mean, so that Indian team was unbelievable, relentless, absolutely relentless.
Yeah, and I think this year, I think I'm not sure, like in New York or in other markets, the Guardians are pretty good. They've got the best bullpen ERA in a decade.
Oh, unbelievable.
Their closer's incredible. I think
I didn't expect it because I had so much respect. See, my favorite manager by 100 miles, and everybody knows this, has always been Francona. Okay?
Yeah, he's amazing.
He and I are friends. We've been friends forever. He's come on my show for 1,000,000 years. The guy was a legend in Boston. He is one of the great managers of modern baseball history.
No doubt.
And one of the great guys you'll ever meet in your life, okay? Yep. I love him. He's a friend, so I am biased, but I don't care. He's that good. So I was surprised by Cleveland this year. I still call them the Indians. I'm sorry. I can't help it. But I was very surprised by Cleveland. I'll tell you this. Well, the American League could not be more wide open.
100% agree, yeah.
The Yankees could beat anybody, but they're not better than anybody else. No. If Yankees get beat by Kansas City in the playoffs, I will not be surprised. Why? Because Kansas City has tremendous starting pitching. Lugo came in here, and you should have seen the game he pitched last week. No. And they have two great players in Whit and Perez in their lineup. Guys who can change games. Yeah. Yankees have two also, but that's all they have. Right. They have weaknesses. If you ask me right now, put a gun to my head, who's coming out of the American League? I'd say Houston, because they know how to win. Because they know how to win. True. I don't trust the Yankees, and I don't trust the Yankee bullpen. Cleveland's got a great bullpen. I don't know if you guys have enough top-to-bottom offense. When the pitching gets good, can you guys score enough runs to win those games?
I listen, the top of their lineup is good, although Kwan's been in a major slump.
Yep.
But Lane Thomas has gotten hot the last month. Obviously, Jose Ramirez is one of the more underrated players.
Tremendous player.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Naylor's a good player, and his kid
he's a solid player, underrated player, underrated player, and usually plays well in big spots. He really does. Ramirez is one of the great RBI guys in recent baseball history. Mm-hmm. Okay, he's a wonderful player, but you can shut your team down. Okay,
yes,
just
fair.
Like you can shut the Yankees down
if
you can pitch around Soto and Judge.
Yeah,
and that's why the leadoff hitter is so important, because if you let the leadoff hitter get on, you're going to give up a run.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. You're giving up a run because you're going to walk either Judge or Soto. You're going to have at least 2 guys on base. You're not getting them both out in the same 2 times up. Very rare. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Soto's going to be tremendous in the postseason because he can bear down on an at-bat better than anybody I've seen in a very long time. Even better than Judge.
Yeah, no doubt. He puts a great at-bat every time he's out there. Are the Braves going to break the Mets fans' hearts again?
Here's the thing. It's coming to that. Yeah. And the Mets have been a shocking surprise. 2 things that are stunning. Since August 11th, the best starting pitchers in baseball have been the Mets, which is amazing. And the best team in baseball over the last 35 games has been the Detroit Tigers.
They've been unreal. I think they might grab that wild card.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. They've been really, and they have a lot of pitching. And here's the deal. The Braves think they own the Mets. If the Mets go in there next Tuesday night, and it's 24, 25, 26, we've had those dates circled for a long time because the Yankees play the Orioles, although that now is losing some steam because the Orioles are losing pace.
That's
and
true.
They have the Giants and Tigers this week while the Yankees are on the West Coast playing Seattle and Oakland. So the Yankees could be 4 or 5 up next Tuesday. The big series is now Mets at Atlanta. If the Braves know that if they beat the Mets Tuesday night, the Mets will fold like a cheap suit. They need the Mets. That game, the Tuesday night game, to me, is unbelievably important because if the Mets lose it, the Braves are going to think, we got them. It's over. And frankly, the Mets have had nothing. It's been a house of horrors for them. And they are going to have to prove this is a different Met team. They have a different chemistry. A lot of guys have made a big difference. Martinez has. Iglesias has had an amazing season. They have gotten it from Vientos has had an incredible power season. They've gotten it from a lot of players, and they're a very cohesive, very together group. The manager's done a great job. But they still don't know if they can win in Atlanta, and we're not going to know until they go down there and win a game in Atlanta. That's why the Tuesday game is going to be enormous. They have 4 with the Phillies this weekend, and they won't miss Wheeler, who's pitching tonight. He'll pitch Sunday.
Right.
And Wheeler, who I loved when he was with the Mets, one of the nicest kids. He used to play catch in the outfield with my boys when they were little. One of the classiest kids I ever met. I was heartbroken when they got rid of him. Yeah. And he's turned out to be a wonderful pitcher. 4 with the Phillies is tough. Really tough. But if I figure now we'll go in, the Mets will go in there even. And it's about that Tuesday night game is as big as it could possibly be.
It's a great time of the year.
It is.
With football underway and the baseball playoffs right around the corner.
October is what sports talk hosts live for.
It's the best.
Every day. Look at New York next week. Tuesday night, Orioles at Yankees, Mets at Braves, and then Wednesday, Thursday, same thing. Then Thursday night, Giants and Cowboys. How can you do better than that?
I mean,
how can you do better? And then we have the Knicks finally good again. So you know how New York is when the Knicks are good. So New York is alive. It's been a rough go in New York in recent years, but New York is alive and kicking right now. It really is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the Knicks kicked the crap out of the Cavs a couple of years ago in the playoffs.
Knicks are good. Knicks are now really, really good. The Villanova 4 are really, really going to be something special. They really are.
Last thing, I know you're a St. John's guy, of course. Even though I didn't go to St. John's, I've always been a huge fan.
Right.
From the time I saw Chris Mullen playing pickup basketball in Marine Park in Brooklyn. Is Rick Pitino going to get him going, get him in the tournament, and get him?
They have. Tournament's not even an issue this year. Yeah. They have a better chance of being a top 10 team than they do missing the tournament this year.
Love it.
Here's why. He has brought in 7 players, including the best backcourt in the country. He pirated the best backcourt. He told me personally, I will have the best starting backcourt in the country this year with the 2 kids he stole, one from Seton Hall and one, the point guard from out west, okay? And those 2 guys, he said, will be the best backcourt in the country. Pitino with that kind of backcourt is going to be very tough to beat. He really will.
I can't wait. Mike, I don't know if you remember this one last thing. One of the first times I ever talked to you was I had done like a Thanksgiving Day show or something. It was my first crack on the fan. And you and Dog brought me on, which you guys would do with a lot of the new hosts, to like review your first show. And you were very complimentary. And then Dog, I had made a mistake about the scheduler. I can't remember exactly what it was. and dog was killing me. And yet I found that to be the most fun thing because I had listened to you guys, and now dog's killing me. You're complimenting. And I'm like, this is the greatest day of my life. And
it's funny, Bull. I do remember that, and we did it with everybody. But what people have to realize is what FAN was as far as a spawning of talent. My first board op was Iron Eagle. Okay,
it was the best.
One of my update guys, part-time update guys, was Kevin Burkhardt.
Yeah,
Mike Breen was one of our guys. So you think about those three guys right now, Iron Eagle. Now, I grew up with Jim Nance, who's like my brother, from CBS. But those three guys right now are three of the biggest broadcasters in the country. And they all came right through FAN, as have a million talk show hosts who have been successful like you and many others, and, so many different ones. I can't even count all of them that are around the country and working in different places, who were board ops, who were, guys who came through the fan when we were there. So it really was amazing how many people passed through WFAN in those 35 years that I sat in the afternoon drive. It's amazing how much talent came through there, a remarkable amount.
It is. And thanks for always being so kind to me when I was working there.
My pleasure. You know what I liked?
Yeah.
Here's what I liked.
Yeah.
You knew what you were talking about, and you had passion. And that's the only thing I ever ask about a sports talk show host is know what you're talking about and have passion for what you're doing, and you'll be fine. And you always showed those qualities.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me. I
Be
appreciate it.
Anytime.
We'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Awesome catching up with Mike and having him on the podcast. I don't have to tell you folks. I'm sure all of you are subscribers to his podcast at BetRivers as well and are following and listening to what he's doing. He, like I do, the Browns post game. He does it for both the Jets and the Giants and the Yankees and Mets here in the playoffs, assuming the Mets get there. We know the Yankees will. So it was really great catching up with him. A lot of fun. Good talking with him, and interesting to get his take on this matchup and his take on the Browns from a perspective of someone who's not, locked into the Browns day in and day out like we are here in Cleveland. Thanks for joining me as always. Thanks to Tim and Max and Monzo and all the guys for producing as always. I'll talk to you next time. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the like button. We busted over. I was hoping to get at the start of the football season to 5,000 subscribers, and you all made that happen, and I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. See you, everybody.